Hello, everyone, and welcome to our channel, our new channel, Pivot to Inclusion. I'm Dr. Nasiah Cirincione-Ulezi, CEO and co-owner of Pivot to Inclusion, and I am here with our Chief Programming Officer, Dr. Scott Herbst, and today we're gonna let you know a little bit about who we are. So I won't start. Let me open the floor to my colleague and co-owner, Scott Herbst. Scott, can you just tell everybody a little bit about who you are before we dive deep into Pivot to Inclusion?
Yes. So I'm Scott Herbst, and I'm a board certified behavior analyst, been in the field for over 20 years now. Actually found the field in 1998, really started grad school in 1999. I'm president of a company called Six Flex Training and Consulting, and we mostly work with companies around communication, management, leadership from a behavioral perspective. I'm an expert in language and thinking and this thing called relational frame theory that informs everything I put together. And aside from that, how we know each other is we're both on the board of the Illinois Association for Behavior Analysis. And that's what brought us together. And I think why I'm here now, I could probably talk for 40 minutes about my history. But one thing that, I grew up in a very diverse neighborhood. And my first job out of college was in a very diverse work environment. There were people of color in leadership roles. And as my peers, I was in a management role. And then I got into the field of behavior analysis and went to my first ABA at the time. It wasn't ABAI yet, and was really struck by how one color our field was at the time. And I know it could still look that way, but at the time it was like, whoa, this is not what I'm used to. And also, so really struck by that. And I like the diverse environment. I actually, grew up in a mostly black neighborhood, went to so I just liked that. It felt very, like the diversity felt at home to me. Right.
Okay. Okay.
And then I get to this field, I'm like, whoa, this is not diverse. And I felt a little out of place where it's an environment I'm not totally used to. And then, you get used to it. It's like, I think being white, it's pretty easy to get used to that. Right.
Yes.
I didn't feel anyone looking at me or out of place necessarily, except it was just different. But it was always something on my mind, and something on my mind as a field that I think we talk about how we have a commitment to saving the world. And it's in the text we read of the foundational seminal works of Skinner. Skinner's like, we got to save the world. It's on us,
Yes. Yes.
And I'm like, we're not reaching the world.
Mm-hmm.
So, I think that's what I want to say now. And then, we were on the board together when George Floyd was killed.
Yes.
And everything erupted. And that's, I think, where this conversation started in terms of how do we make a difference in the field of how do we make a difference in our system. And from there saw that, I think you and I have a pretty good chemistry and really being able to have some pretty challenging conversations.
Yes.
And people would benefit from being able to have those conversations.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you, Scott.
Yeah. Now, what about you?
Let me just jump in and share a little bit about me.
Yeah.
Now, for those of you who do not have a visual and you're listening to us only, just let me describe myself. I am a middle-aged Black woman. And similar to Scott, I have been in the field for 30 years, going into 30 years plus. So I started in the field or working in disability services actually right out of high school. I was a direct service professional in a small agency in Joliet, Illinois.
What
So
agency?
the agency was Cornerstone.
Okay. I started at Trinity Services in
Okay.
Joliet. Yeah.
Yes, yes. I started as frontline direct service professional at Cornerstone Services. Um, so I have seen the field, I've seen it grow, I've seen it change over the years, and I've held a variety of positions. So I started off, like I said, as a direct service professional. Then I segued into teaching as a special education teacher for students with autism. From there, I went into higher ed faculty in the special education department and educational administration. And today I am a board certified behavior analyst.
And
So
what is your doctorate in?
my doctorate is in curriculum and instruction. I have an EDD from Loyola
Okay, got
University
it.
of Chicago.
Correct me if I'm wrong. You also have a degree in leadership.
I do.
Yes.
That my second master's was in educational leadership. The first one was in special education.
Yeah.
So I share all that just to say I have been around, and again, I've held a variety of positions in the field. But the constant that I have seen throughout my more than 20 years of service in this field is the lack of diversity. Again, I am a Black woman, and oftentimes, even as a teacher, I would find myself as the only Black woman. So, because of that, that kind of pushed me to get my certification. Because in our field, what I found was people really didn't see and hear me because I didn't have the letters BCBA behind my name. And just let me share this with everyone. Before I got my BCBA, I had 2 master's and a doctorate degree, but still I was not heard. So I greatly value being seen and being heard. And I really desired to change the direction that I saw the field going in as far as addressing the barriers that prevent people of color from coming into the field, and further people of color coming into the field and assuming leadership positions. So that has been my passion. And this is not a passion that has recently developed for me. This is something I have been working on for really my entire life. As our channel grows and our stories unfold, you'll get an opportunity to hear my story. So this is definitely a passion, a labor of love. Like Scott said, we met via ILABA, the Illinois Association for Behavior Analysis. We both sit on the board for that organization, and we've really been able to dive into some incredibly deep conversations about race. And what we discovered was, hey, we should really come together and share this information with others. Scott is really a maverick at how the mind works in relational frame theory. And we thought it would be great to come together and pair that with my passion and knowledge about diversity, equity, and inclusion. Thus, what do we have? Pivot to Inclusion, which is an organization that's dedicated to serving individuals and companies who want to grow and learn in the realm of diversity, equity, and inclusion. Yeah, so that's it.
Can I ask you a quick question that I know the answer to, but I want you to share?
You can.
Awesome. Could you say something a little bit about the approach P2I takes And I'm asking you this instead of having you ask me this,
Yeah.
because I think you really brought this and really brought this and have the direction we're taking. I think it's the right approach, and I credit you for being the one to say this is the approach we need to take
Oh,
to
well,
how we approach diversity, equity, and inclusion in organizations.
yes. Okay. Well, thank you. Um, I will say that both of our values, as far as how we approach diversity, equity, and inclusion, really lie around companies understanding that diversity, equity, and inclusion is not something you check the box on. It is a commitment to continual growth, lifelong learning, and self-reflection. So once we as an organization pivot to inclusion, can determine that that is your individual and organizational commitment, we become committed to supporting and helping organizations meet their goals for diversity, equity, and inclusion. So that's it, really in a nutshell. It's not about performance. It's not about getting people of color into spaces. It's really about going into organizations and partnering with organizations to help create systems that support belonging and connectedness. Those are long-term commitments. So that's it, Scott. Like I said, I know that we both line up in making sure that whatever organization or individual signs up with us for support, that they understand this is not short term. We don't go in to do a training. We don't go in to do a workshop. It's continual. It's a commitment.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So, Scott, I have a question for you, and I think
Yes.
everyone will benefit from your answer. Really, what are your long-term goals for Pivot to Inclusion? I don't think I've ever asked that before.
I think we talked a little bit about it in meetings. I think so. One, I really love this approach, the system-wide approach,
Mm-hmm.
and I think so. One long-term goal is to actually, I think, and I think we're already realizing it. Actually, is that this isn't just about equity and inclusion, but it's also about organizational performance inside equity and inclusion, right? And I don't quite know how that looks yet, but I was just listening to this, and I went and looked it up, and honestly, I didn't quite understand the research, but this woman did, and forgive me, I don't have her name off the top of my head, but she actually went back and looked at creativity and output, creative output measured by patent applications. And her research suggests that in times of real racial strife, and when I say racial strife, I don't necessarily mean like the protests we're seeing now, but I mean things like where the South is really ramping up Jim Crow, or there's like real suppressive efforts going on that show up, are obvious in history, that it actually suppresses creativity, suppresses progress, it has an effect on the broader culture. It's not just about keeping this group down, it actually impacts society, right?
Absolutely.
And I kind of got to expect the same thing happens in organizations, that if you've got an organization that isn't diverse, isn't equitable, that, and kind of like you said, not just about like, let's hurt certain quote, as you called it, performative, right? Performance. But when when you're not promoting a diverse environment, that it's got to impact the performance of the organization.
Yes.
That if you experience, as a Black woman, that you can't rise, like your leadership is topped out here and you're really not welcome here, that's going to affect your performance here. That you're not going to be looking as hard to see, how can I improve the organization? How can I,
that's right.
What can I contribute, et cetera, et cetera. The job will become for you. And I've heard you share this elsewhere, in in talks or interviews you've given, that it really does, your job becomes about, like, I'm just going to survive this job, right?
That's
and
it.
When you're just surviving a job, you're really not, that's a lot of avoidance, and avoidance behavior under the control of avoidance just rises enough to a level to survive, right?
You're breaking it down. Thank you, Scott.
Yeah.
Dropping some gems. Absolutely.
So
let me jump in. Let me jump in, because you're speaking my language now. This is it. This is why we want diversity. And beyond that, we want diversity and the desire for diversity to flow in all directions. So what do I mean by that? Understand there is an element to diversity that organizations want different people, different thoughts, different perspectives. But also, where we need to go is that I want organizations to look around, and I want them to take a critical look at who are they employing. And when they see that lack of diversity, I want them to really sense a deep and profound loss, like something is missing here, because it is. When you don't have diversity and inclusion, it is a deep and profound loss for your organization. You're missing something. And I want people connected to that. It's not just about people of color or people of different genders coming into the organization. It's being able to look around and say, wow, people here are all the same. And because of that, we're not going to achieve all that we can achieve. So I agree with what you're saying 100%, Scott. I'm lining up with you.
Awesome.
Mm-hmm.
The other thing I want to say about that is, I think there's, I tend to be a leader wherever I go, and I've had a lot of leadership roles over the course of my not even career, like going back to high school, right? Yeah. And so having had some experience, there's a very different experience in leadership when your team, and as a leader, you're clear your team wants you to win and is there to empower you as a leader. Yes. Right? And then there's a very different experience when you're leading something and it seems like everyone's got their own little agenda and is trying to get their thing done, not focused on like what the team's about, right?
Yes.
And there's more to say about that, but so there's like a very different experience, and I think the goal is to create environments where that way of viewing things naturally arises.
Yes.
That where your team is like, I want this place to win, right? And though to actually facilitate that way of looking at things at the front lines or every level of the organization,
That's
You've
right.
got to get intentional about what kind of are we building an environment that naturally supports that way of looking at things. And if people come into work and they think, well, this place doesn't have my back, or this place isn't looking out for me, then
Right.
people aren't going to come in thinking like, okay, I want this place to win, right?
That's right.
So the long-term goal is to really build organizations like that.
Yeah.
And there's obviously tons of work to do in the world of diversity, equity, and inclusion.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, you know what? Let me share this with you. You know, that organizational perspective is a central part of our work. But one of the things that I have learned from you, and I learned it in a couple of your workshops, and you do a series called Mastery of Self, that really is been transformative in my life. But what I'm learning is, even within the realm of diversity, equity, and inclusion, there must be some reflection back on the self. You
Yeah, say
know,
more about that.
there all of our behaviors are ruled by these contingencies
Yeah.
that are within our culture. You know, the thumbprint of our culture is in us in so many different ways.
Yeah.
And what I'm finding, especially after taking your mastery of self, is there's so many things that I brought to the table um, as a woman of color that I initially thought they were really racially motivated. But what I'm finding is it's more about being a human.
Mm.
And some of the things, like I said, I thought, oh, this is so specific to me being a Black woman. Some of it is, me being a human. And
Yes.
as I'm talking to different people, I'm finding, oh, you go through that too. Maybe not in the same way that I go through it as a Black woman, but it is a shared experience. One being this idea of imposter syndrome.
Yeah.
So I really thought for a long time that was something very specific to me and my experience as a Black woman, although I think that it does manifest differently for different people, but it's a very human experience. And when I think about pivot to inclusion, I also want to connect us on a human level.
Yes.
I think that there's something very deep and profound about us gaining common ground as humans, recognizing and seeing all our differences, but we are all human and largely have a lot of the same struggles.
Yeah, I think that's right.
Yeah.
I think that's right.
Mhm.
I don't know what else to say about that. I love that you love mastery of self.
Yes, I
Yeah.
do. I do. I kept my materials and I'm also using it. I'm teaching a class at the Chicago school this semester, as you know, and I'm embedding a lot of that material. The particular course that I'm teaching is leadership, consulting, and supervision.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm finding that within the realm of leadership, there has to be a lot of reflection on self and what you as an individual bring to those relationships.
Awesome.
Yeah. So Scott, I am so excited. I'm loving this work. To date, we have been able to work with a couple of organizations, and from my lens, I think we have impacted those organizations, and we have been able to assist them in doing the work to make great changes. What do you think?
I think so too. I think, well, one, yeah, I'm super excited,
Yeah.
and I have evidence for that in the world. That every time you and I have a meeting about this business, I go talk. We're quarantining here. I'm quarantining with my girlfriend, and she'll be like, "Scott, you are so lit up," and so this work is a big source of joy for me, and yeah, and I think we have made a difference. I'm pretty proud of the fact that we are taking a very one thing I'm proud of so far in the early stages of this business, that we have well, one, it hasn't been too hard to find clients, and we've maintained integrity with that. We're not just here to provide training. We're not here to have your employees feel good because they learned something, or we're really about how does your system support a, a system of diversity, equity, inclusion. And I think we've been really lucky, and one thing I'm excited about is that there's organizations out there that recognize that and
Yeah.
say that's what we want, right? So really grateful and optimistic for the future that's the case. I have a friend who, when I said this is what I'm up to, she said, "Okay, well, good luck," because I don't know if organizations want that, but
Mhm.
there's some that do at least,
Yeah.
right? Am I answering your question?
Yes. Yes. And why don't we let people know what they can expect from this channel and this podcast? Because we're
Yeah, I think that's a great idea. Yeah.
YouTube/podcast. I already have a YouTube channel called Ulezi the Advocate. So this will bring something a little bit different, and I'm excited about that. One of the things I want to do, and I haven't ran this by you yet, is interview some of our thought leaders in the field who are really living out their values around diversity, equity, and inclusion. So one of the things I would like to do is get some interviews scheduled.
Absolutely. One concern I have, because there's podcasts I really love
Mhm.
where it is maybe the same two people talking to each other, and while I love what they offer, I tend to get burned out on those,
Yes.
because if you and I just talk to each other, we're just going to eventually,
Mhm.
6 episodes in, we're going to start repeating what we've already said,
Yep.
if not sooner, right?
Yes.
Um, so yeah, I'm looking forward to that.
Awesome.
And what
Awesome.
else?
Well, Scott, like you said early on, one of the things we have been able to do is have these conversations, conversations that other people might not have people in their life that they're readily able to have these conversations with. And I really want to kind of demonstrate for people what that looks like, having, in some cases, tough conversations, having conversations that can be uncomfortable. Um, I think we've done that in a very public way, and people have received it well. And I would like that to continue, not just like you said between us, but having others on this channel who can join us in having those uncomfortable conversations to move us forward. So not just talking for the sake of talking, but conversation that leads to action.
Awesome.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I'd like to use this as a little bit of an educational platform.
Yes.
One thing. So I'd like to see us do topics and dig into this topic. One thing you and I talked about the other day was, you do work with young children,
Yes.
and sometimes they live in a racist home environment where people are openly racist.
Yes.
And then they bring those conversations into the clinic, and there's, well, how do you deal with that with families?
Absolutely.
So things like that, right?
Absolutely.
And so providing a little, and and I'm not going to give it away now, but I thought, what you said about, well, how do you approach that, was particularly valuable. And I know you're not the only one dealing with this, and so I want to use this channel for things like that as well.
Yes, I am excited about using this channel as an educational platform and to share information. I'm all about it, and now we are all about it. So moving forward, I ask that everyone please support our channel by doing what? Liking,
Subscribe.
sharing.
Hit the
Yes,
subscribe button.
subscribe. We want to grow. We want to spread the word and share our message. So yes, please subscribe. And what do you think, Scott? How often would you like to post videos?
Oh my God.
You got to make that public commitment.
I think we should at least post monthly. And do you think more frequently?
Absolutely.
The look on your face said more frequently.
Yes,
Yeah.
definitely. I'm looking, and now, because our conversations are they're authentic.
Yeah.
And we just, we have them so naturally. Scott, I think we should commit to once a week. Once a week. Now, that's not to say we're going to have the big interviews or, the long videos, but I think we should commit to a short video once a week.
Okay, deal.
We can do it.
Deal.
Okay, we made it. Yes, and we're all about moving forward with integrity. That's our word. Once a week.
Awesome.
Okay.
So, is there anything else for us to talk about to these people about by way of introduction and what we're about right now?
Not right now. There's more to come.
Okay. We're gonna have to learn how to end these things.
Yes.
Because I'm sitting here thinking, no, I don't know how to say goodbye.
Yeah. Well, I can just wave goodbye, everybody. Thank you for stopping by. Thank you for listening. I appreciate it.
Awesome. Thank you. And thank you, Nasiah. Thanks for being my partner. This is,
Yes.
like I said,
You're welcome.
this lights me up. So thanks for
Good.
being here to provide that. And I guess we'll see you next time.